Hi students, it's me. I'm here to talk about counterargument today, so I have my little list of things that I wanted to go over. A lot of students think they know how to do counterargument and they'll bring up maybe one objection to one of their points, but real counterargument means to fully think your thesis through and to handle each and every possible objection to it. Martin Luther King Jr., at the end of Letter from Birmingham Jail, apologizes if his letter is too long. That's handling every possible objection to what you're doing. So let's go back to the example that we talked about on the thesis sheet about students arguing that we should have all online classes from now on. Now, the students' evidence was that some studies showed that classes could be successful if they were designed in certain ways and if students behaved in certain ways. And then the only counter argument that the students wanted to do was finding studies that showed the opposite. That is not everything else that's going on here. You need to, if you're going to say all classes from now on should be online, you have to talk about the benefits and drawbacks from the student point of view, the benefits and drawbacks from the teacher point of view, the benefits and drawbacks from the school point of view. You got to talk about the money, you got to talk about the training, you have to talk about all these things. And the students who argued about that last time ended up completely ignoring that most students taking online classes right now are reporting that they hated it. They just said, oh, but this study shows it can be successful. But that doesn't deal with the actual counter argument. To do a counter argument well, you have to do some research to find out why something works in the way it does, why it was set up that way. You have to look at exactly how it works, because if you don't understand the process of something fully, you can't then argue for it to change, right? And you have to be able to show some empathy to understand fully the other side. And that's so that you can represent the other side fairly instead of just doing a straw man argument, which is saying the other side is just evil or stupid. No one is intending to be evil or stupid. They might be doing stuff that we think is evil or stupid, but they think they're doing the right thing. So why do they think that's right? And that's how we can argue against it. So some other examples. I've never seen a successful argument about changing the start time of high schools to be later in the day. There are very good reasons to start that. There's circadian rhythm arguments, there's all of that stuff. But what I've never seen a student do is to really deal with the good and bad for students, the good and bad for parents, the good and bad for the school. Part of the good and bad for the school is that in many school systems, they reuse the same buses throughout the day. And so the bus picks up and drops off high school, picks up and drops off middle school, picks up and drops off elementary school. And to change the school schedule where all the schools are starting at a closer time means that you have to have more buses. And of course, you cannot say, well, let's just have more buses and not explain where that money is going to come from. There are practical reasons why it's set up in this way. The other reasons, of course, are that we have a lot of people who are doing after school activities who need school to get out a little earlier. We have some arguments from parents saying my kid needs to go to school before I go to work, or my kid won't go to school, but you have to deal with all of those things. You can't just say teenagers have a better circadian rhythm when they wake up later. Yep, they do, but you gotta handle all of it. Do I think high school should start later? I think in a lot of cases it could, yeah. But you have to be persuasive in that argument to get me to think that your argument is good. The common application for college, many students think that there should be one. There are definitely benefits for students for having that. There's a reason why schools don't have that, though. They actually want to make sure that you want to go there, that you want to go there enough to take the time to fill out that application. It's part of their way of narrowing down who's going to come here and who really wants to be here. Do I think it's a total hassle not to have a Common application? I do. But do I also understand what the school's doing? Yes. It's not enough, if you're going to make that argument, to just talk about why this is good for students. You would have to talk about why this would be good for the whole system if you're going to make a solid argument. And I know that can be difficult. I had a student several years ago who tried to argue that every single school should let in every single student who wanted to go there, that there shouldn't be like a no, you can't go here thing. And she was saying, well, because she wanted to go to Berkeley and didn't get in. So she was at Davis and she was really mad about it. And she said Berkeley should not have been able to turn her down because she should be the best judge of whether she's capable of succeeding at Berkeley. Except that doesn't matter because you can't just tell every school they have to take everybody who wants to go. You cannot have all the classrooms built and the teachers hired and the facilities done and the course schedule in place if you don't know how many people are showing up. You have to be able to say X many people are showing up next year, so let's do that. It's unreasonable. It doesn't work. You have to not just think about why you want to do something, but how it would get done and whether it's practical. One more example about school before I talk about my classes specifically. At UC Davis, we are on the quarter system and not the semester system. I hate the quarter system deeply and passionately, especially in writing classes. So, because we don't have time to do stuff. You know, you're doing all the same work that I do on the semester system, Davis students, and it's more than just Davis students watching this, but, you know, just know you're doing the same amount of work that I do on the semester system, except for people on the semester system have 6 or 7 weeks more to think about it and to get their shit together. But years and years and years ago, I was talking to the evil of the quarter system with a tenured professor at UC Davis, and she said, well, do you know why we're on that system? The reason why this was important that she was a tenured professor is that only tenured professors get to vote, only research faculty get to vote about the governance of the university. So teaching faculty like me, whose primary job is teaching and not research, I don't get a say in what happens. Taxation without representation kind of thing. But she said that research professors tend to, at Davis, only teach 2 quarters of the year. They only then have to interact with students and come to campus and hold office hours for 20 weeks of the year. If we move to the semester system, they'd have to do that 30 weeks of the year, and they don't want to do that. That's why we're on the quarter system. She also said some of them would have to take it like an hour to change their syllabus, and that they weren't going to do that either. You know, I can't have a successful argument arguing that we should be on the semester system unless I'm able to deal with why we're not. And I had to ask somebody who knew to be able to do it right. So I said I wanted to talk about my classes. I prefer when you're making any kind of proposal that not be about one of my classes, and there are 2 reasons. The first one is counter-argument. I have never once had a student in a proposal paper about something I do in my class, ever once ask me why it's done that way. They just read a paper saying it shouldn't be done this way. And then I read it and I'm like, I'm required to do that way. That's not even up to me. And so it's this pointless argument. And it's also showing that you're not doing counter-argument the right way, because counter-argument the right way, you do your research. Why is it done that way? The research there would be asking me. But, I would tell you. I'm always willing to tell you why I'm doing something the way I'm doing it. But there's just been a lack of empathy there. The other reason that I don't want you to write things that I'm going to grade about things that you want to change about my class or whatever is that puts me in a super awkward position. Because say I look at your paper and go, well, this is not logical because you're telling me to change something I don't have the capacity to change, and you didn't do the research and you didn't do the counter argument. And it's too easy for the student to say, oh, she's just saying my paper doesn't work well because I'm criticizing her. You can't turn in a paper to me that I'm not allowed to criticize. And so, just You can always talk to me with ideas about things I could do better and things I could tweak. Just don't put them in papers, because then that's weird. The very last thing I want to say about counterargument is to remind you once again that it's about reasonable objections to the counterargument. I learned recently that there is a doctor who thinks that people get things like cervical cancer and HPV, that women get those diseases by having sex with demons. Why do I know about this woman? Because the president said she was great and retweeted her shit. If I'm writing a paper about HPV or cervical cancer, and I tell you what causes HPV and what causes cervical cancer, HPV is usually what's causing cervical cancer. I'm just going to tell you the scientific fact for that. It is not going to be a counter argument in my paper that maybe it's caused by sex with demons. Like, she doesn't get equal time in my paper. I hope that makes sense. That these needs to be for a reasonable audience. If your audience is unreasonable, why are you writing that paper to them? You're not going to change their minds. It doesn't matter how many studies you throw up there. And so if you're talking to an audience that will never listen to you because they're like, la 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 la, demon sex, then that paper is pretty pointless. All right, questions about counter argument? Shoot those to me. Let's make your paper strong.